Howdy fellow Temtem tamers and Pokemon trainers. I'm Chillbro, and I love creature collecting, especially Pokemon. Though I'm a bit of a filthy casual, I do have a deep respect, love, and experience with the concept, like probably most people. And I've been playing a lot of Pokemon over the last 6 months. I did Emerald, I did Heart Gold, I did Bidoof version, which is a ROM hack of Fire Red. I played Shield. I'm gonna break down my thoughts on Temtem in an attempt to start a conversation about how we can make creature collecting adventures better for everyone, forever. Maybe you could tell from the title, but there are some troubles in the paradise that is Temtem, and I haven't heard that many people talk about it, honestly. Really, there's been a lot of praise, kind of unbridled, and I wonder why people... Maybe because it's new and it's exciting, and I can't blame people for liking it, and I like it, but there's some troubles, and we're going to talk about it. A few months ago, a friend in my Discord server linked the Pokemaniac's wet dream, Temtem by Crema. A massively multiplayer online creature collecting game with PvE co-op and PvP battles. Take my money, please. I just finished my Pokemon Shield playthrough, was slightly disappointed with the game's offerings, though I still enjoyed myself, and I'm finding massive enjoyment in the post-game with breeding, max raid, battle tower, and Wi-Fi battles, and saw Temtem as the Pokemon game I've wanted since I knew that massively multiplayer online games were a thing. I went and signed up for the early access scheduled for January 21st, 2020 because I wanted to check it out. I'm thirsty for what Temtem is promising. And about 3 weeks back, there was news buzzing about the Temtem server stress test throughout, all the Epic Gamer communities. So I, like most of you probably, went and signed up to get that sweet early access to this exciting new thing called Temtem. And now the stress tests are over and the early access is here. So how is Temtem really? What are its strengths and weaknesses? Well, I'm gonna let you know what I think. You may have already guessed that I'll be doing the unthinkable, comparing Temtem to Pokemon Sword and Shield. I'll break it up into 3 sections. There's gonna be toss-ups and ties, which is something that can go either way, as they're really just too similar in both games to properly distinguish from one another. A trouble is something I think Temtem does worse, or didn't even bother trying to improve on over Pokemon. A triumph is something I think Temtem does objectively better than Pokemon. Okay, so let's start first with the toss-ups. These points summarize something both games do, which are positive, or something they both do that could be considered detrimental to the player's overall experience, but could be improved. World building and dialogue. Both games, Sword and Shield and Temtem, suffer from textual diarrhea. Temtem makes the problem worse with dialogue trees and extra dialogue options for some NPCs, and by some I mean pretty much most of them. The music is incredible in both games. The controls are stiff and antiquated, and so is the presentation style. Both games feel like they're straight out of the late 90s era in terms of presentation, control, and world traversal. Kind of like N64 and PlayStation era of game and camera control. Battling. Even with the Forza double battles, there's not enough variation in battle to differentiate the two. It's turn-based rock, paper, scissors format. Stamina is an interesting mechanic, though all it really offers is another way for Temtem to take damage. How interesting is a turn where all Temtem on the field rest or use items to regain stamina? It sometimes feels like you're just wasting time in Temtem. The design in some areas vaguely reminds me of time play padding methods, like some puzzles in some games. This is a problem that plagues both games. It's the boring linear corridor routes, right? Where you're just trudging along from one trainer or tamer battle to the next trainer or tamer battle. It feels less engaging when the reward for beating a trainer is battling another trainer. Okay, so this one is my opinion, big warning, don't get upset, okay? It's just my opinion. Forced double battles are obnoxious during the main story, main quest gameplay. But at least in Temtem, you're always building your squad for double battles, so that works in its favor. One of the things I really dislike in Pokemon is the forced double battles, and that's all that Temtem is. So this takes us into what's going to be the main section of the video, and that is the troubles with Temtem. Here I'm going to be highlighting the issues I see with the game, things that weren't broken in Pokemon but Temtem decided to fix anyways, things which are too similar, the limits of Temtem's technical design, and perceived issues with in-game balancing. Please be reminded that this is my opinion and analysis based on experience and some research that I've done, but not absolute fact, of course. So the first and probably biggest trouble is that it's too similar to Pokemon. The creators aren't shy about taking their inspiration from Pokemon, and that's fine. And they boldly state so in the description of the game itself. Like on their Steam page, you'll see Temtem is a massively multiplayer online creature collection game inspired by Pokemon, or something along those lines. I didn't write down the quote verbatim, but that's pretty much what it says. Sadly, Temtem takes some of the worst aspects of Pokemon and amplifies them. The dialogue is, like I mentioned in the toss-up section, way too much. Pokemon suffers from the same issue. Temtem takes it a step further though with the conversation trees, and I honestly don't care for the endless, mindless babble. It would be way better if both games introduced voice acting. Double battles. Annoying and frustrating when the AI focuses down one Temtem, and this happens pretty often. I mean, yeah, that's the most effective strategy, but yikes, it is frustrating. Revives are probably not required, but strongly recommended. They're fairly expensive too. The amount of money earned versus the amount of sustain required by purchased items doesn't feel balanced right now. Feels like it was originally designed around 1v1 battles, but they pivoted somewhere during development and didn't fully work out the balancing for payouts on money. Or maybe, and this is a conspiracy theory, maybe because they have confirmed that microtransactions will be in the game, you can buy the in-game currency with real currency to buy sustain items so that you don't have to go back to the Temporium or whatever it's called constantly, or faint. Maybe Gen 7 and Gen 8 Pokemon have made me soft. Let's talk about Pokemon a little bit. In Pokemon, right, double battles are the official competitive format, and some crazy crap can happen with items, signature moves, and abilities, and natural synergies that you don't always have to lose a move slot to use. So there are a few held items that I came across in the playthroughs of the alpha stress test, but nothing that I saw is essential or really worth using yet. Double battles in Temtem are forced, and the early game, at the very least, doesn't feel properly balanced for it if you're playing on your own. Unless the intention is to make the game more difficult and punishing than Pokemon, this could be a bad thing. During the walk through the first dojo, I knew I would faint and have to come back from a Temtem Center, or Temporium, yeah. So I just turned the game off and quit. It already happened a few times in the playthrough, and it's not fun. It's kind of exhausting. And it seems like you're never going to have enough money to buy sustain items for your squad. At least not in the early game. The synergy moves are learned, and in a competitive format would probably be much more predictable than the many combinations available in like an official competitive Pokemon battle format. The sting of a loss doesn't seem as bad in Temtem compared to Pokemon. Like, you don't stand to lose as much from losing a tamer battle as you would from a trainer battle. You will lose in the alpha unless you do a lot of grinding or play with a friend, and I would assume it's going to be the same in the early access version. There's no saves or resets for battles. That's because it's an MMO. So it's kind of a step backwards for Pokemon-like games, but it's just how MMOs work, right? Like, you faint, your squad's wiped, you're back to the Temporium to heal, then you're gonna be walking all the way back to the battle you lost. You get the XP from the fight though, I guess, so that's something. If you use an item, it's gone forever. If you used it by mistake, then you've wasted money and there's nothing you can do about it. At least the buyback for items is about 66% its purchase price, so if you make an error in purchasing, you won't hurt as bad selling things back as you would in Pokemon. Of course, in Pokemon, if you bought the wrong thing, you could just reload your game. The forced perspective and lock camera. There's a grid system for the world and the asset placement. That's no innovation in world presentation whatsoever. No innovation in the traversal or trainer battles. The formula is just, it's so tired in anything that isn't a Pokemon game. I can't stress enough how similar this game is to Pokemon in all the wrong ways. Locking progression behind the gym dojo victories, it doesn't look like Temtem uses an HM kind of system though. Like the surfboards are unlocked after beating the first dojo, which grants the player access to the water on the overworld. Maybe this is better than locking progression behind a few NPCs and invisible walls like Gen 7 and 8 Pokemon, but it feels like a step backwards. Okay, so this is the most troubling trouble, which troubles me most terribly about Temtem. Every move you make in battle is sent to a server. This game does not have an offline single-player only mode. You must have an internet connection to play Temtem, and that's coming straight from the Play Temtem team on Twitter. Check this out. This invasive always online design is a big step backwards for the genre. So why does each move have to be sent to the server, especially for the scripted tamer battles? Why do you have to wait for the turn to happen until the server responds? Makes sense for co-op if there's no peer-to-peer connectivity, but the data exchange should be minimal and non-transactional. But it looks like that they're all transactional and synchronous. Whoa. Transactional, non-transactional, synchronous? Okay, sorry for the jargon, but this is like how developers talk about the programs that they write. The ones especially that rely on a database to operate. Databases store data using transactions to ensure the accuracy of that data and to reduce the redundancy and errors of said data. Synchronous refers to the way in which the program requesting the transaction handles the server's reply, or in this case, kind of lack of reply. This very likely means that every move you make is written to a database, but your action will not register, like happen in-game, until the server database confirms the action with your game client. They could have at least made the database reading and writing asynchronous so that battles would happen in real time without requiring communication to the server to initiate action in-game. This probably isn't possible though, given the design already implemented, so whoops. And so like for a Nintendo Switch release, unless you have a Wi-Fi connection, you can't play Temtem on the go on your Switch. That's cool. It seems in the third stress test though that the developers were trying a different battle system that was like asynchronous. Didn't really seem to be working for them quite yet though. So a positive to that: if you're disconnected mid-battle, you won't lose your progress in that battle. In the third stress test with the new battle system, I lost all progression in a scripted battle before the first boss due to disconnection from the server, so that's another step backwards. Some negatives: if the servers are down, you can't even do simple and essential things in the game like battle tamers, catch Temtem, heal your squad, or make purchases or sales at stores. If the servers are ever shut down, the game will no longer be playable, and all of your progress, hard work, and Temtems could be gone forever. If your entire game save file is located on the game servers, then any server error could result in you losing progress. Okay, so let's talk about one of the new features kind of to the genre, at least that I know of, and that's the Tem Essence Vial. This seems to be the answer to the heavy and consistent damage your squad takes. It's a one-time revive and full heal item for your entire squad, like a single-use kind of Temporium or Pokemon Center that you get after going through the game's first route. Kinda seems like a cop-out for bad balancing. That's just my opinion though. Maybe this is actually a triumph, and my opinion on it will change. Okay, so I used it for the first time during the third stress test, and while it is a very handy item, it still doesn't balance out the absolute pummeling you take along the first couple of routes. Okay, there's derpy looking characters. Yeah, look at some of them. They're just, I don't know. Enough said. The silly pronoun pandering that appears to have no effect on the dialogue or gameplay. There's two characters, two tamers that you battle called Lara and Sarah that refer to you as they when I chose he, him, and they referred to me as they when I chose they, them. So it's likely they only asked this at the beginning of the game in the North American region versions, and it has absolutely no effect on the majority of dialogue and gameplay. So think of Temtem in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, etc. Like in these markets, it's not going to bother asking if you identify as they, them. Like that girl with girl kiss in The Rise of Skywalker that was easily edited out for the other markets. So the co-op gameplay seems overpromised. Seems like it's gated, and all the videos and content out there about it is well controlled. I wasn't able to join any friends during the stress test for the co-op. The alpha has no way to interact with Steam friends. Seems like you have to luck out and have a friend show up in the interact list of users, where you can then invite them to your group for co-op. No one I've talked to who played the game was able to get co-op working. There are a handful of videos on YouTube showing co-op gameplay, and many of them don't actually show how you group up with another player. Hopefully I'm wrong about this one, because I don't want to say Temtem is overpromising, but it does seem kind of sketchy. Maybe co-op won't be available on January 21st's early access release date. I tweeted at Play Temtem during the third stress test and asked them how to play co-op with a friend, and they still haven't replied. Googling how to play co-op just shows results of articles telling you how it will be a feature, not a single support document telling you how to do it. This is the last trouble with Temtem that I found, and that it is not Pokemon. So what do I mean by that? Well, for me personally, the motivation to play through and put up with this garbage game design without the Pokemon branding, monsters, lore, characters, and worlds is considerably lower. I mean, Pokemon suffers from a lot of these same problems, like I said in the toss-ups, but I'm a little bit more willing to put up with it. It's not a good thing, but that's the way it is. I'd like to end this inquisitive dive into Temtem by talking about the areas it absolutely triumphs over Pokemon. It's technically outstanding and graphically beautiful. Temtem puts the Sword and Shield graphics and performance to absolute shame. So technically outstanding how? Well, it looks incredible. You're seeing footage of it this whole video, and it runs like cream when it runs. And obviously the stress test is no way to gauge its stability. But there are, some issues with the game, the way it works, that could spell issues, like the always online design. But it's got that co-op battle goodness that could be really interesting if anybody gets to try it, other than a few YouTubers. Graphically beautiful how? Well, it's got a great engine, it's got good art, it's well designed, and it is executed fantastically. The Temtem models and animations are as good or better than the new Pokemon models introduced in Generation 8. The Tamer models are well animated with decent customization options. Unfortunately, they and most of the other NPC characters kind of look like trolls, though. There's a mind-blowing amount of people on one server at a time with no hiccups. No way to really interact with them though. No collision, no talking, at least not that I've seen. You can pull up an emote wheel to emote though, and there was a text chat in the first stress test build. There's fun idle animations if you plan on sitting there and watching your Temtem do nothing. It has side quests, real side quests, kind of. Wow. I haven't actually completed any, but it seems like a true innovation. That's not true. I finished one, it was kind of boring. Just answering questions in a dialogue tree. Meh. I mean, nothing that Pokemon hasn't done before. Partner Temtem following you on the overworld map. Very cool. Vibrant and fun setting, lots of color, well put together. If Temtem makes any sort of splash upon release, it will hopefully make Game Freak and the Pokemon Company try harder and budget more money and resources towards development for all future Pokemon releases. Competition is better for everyone. So before I get to my conclusions, I'd like to mention that Temtem's developer Crema is incredible. Immortal Redneck, another game they've made, is an absolute riot. I own it and I love it. This video critique is in no way a condemnation of the work they've done on Temtem. In fact, I'd like to think of it as passionate praise and constructive criticism. So what can be taken away from this brief glimpse we've all been given into the world of Temtem? Well, that's gonna depend on who you are. I'd really like to know what everyone thinks about Temtem and the future of Pokemon, so leave me some comments and let's start talking about our shared passion for creature collecting. Here's what I think to get the conversation started. Temtem is a gorgeous, technically impressive, solid gaming experience, and it's fun, that on the surface level, puts Pokemon to shame. Temtem is at times painfully similar to Pokemon in a single-player experience. It is likely an exponentially better experience when played in its entirety with a friend, especially since the campaign appears to be balanced towards encouraging co-op play, or maybe microtransactions. The developer has said there will be microtransactions. Ugh. And this is a quote from the developer. No, the game won't include any pay to win at all. We're never going to sell Temtem items that will help you in battles or experience boosts. Which doesn't fill me with confidence. Temtem is an always online game that may or may not exist in the future, and players will have no choice in whether the game lives or dies. If successful, Temtem will make Pokemon a better game by introducing much needed competition in the creature collecting game genre. Ultimately, I'm not saying you should pass on Temtem's early access or that you should get it either. Do what you feel is real. Just be aware of the always online snafu that could haunt all players in the future and make all of your Temtem nothing more than a memory. Also, microtransactions in a game you have to pay retail price for is disgusting. It's also a predictor of that the game will go free to play in the near future. So what do you think? Are you going to be playing Temtem from early access and beyond, waiting for the full retail release, or passing on it altogether? Let me know down below. If you like this kind of content, consider hitting that subscribe button for when more videos like this one appear, as every once in a while I get a fire lit under me. Did you like the video or find it informative? Leave it a like, that helps a bunch with the algorithm, the inspiration, and the motivation. Until next time, stay tamin', stay trainin', and stay pretty.